whether you expand it or not. I think that this commission should survive any potential changes in the existence or non-existence of any town or village. I think it's very important that this be considered, and as far as being a member, I would love to be a member. I would also throw out, as we discussed before, you should also look to maintain expertise, if possible, from volunteers such as Mr. Salonicho, who not only represents Rhinebeck, Village of Mamaroneck. He has expertise as an employee of Scarsdale and familiar with everything else. So, you know, it's an open question to look at. But thank you anyway.
May I just add, because Mayor Rosenblum alluded to the study as far as Rye Town is concerned. For those, it doesn't really affect Rye City too much, but we're at the beginning stages where there was a grant from New York State to look at to actually have an RFP and have professional input so we can have a study to look at the possibility of the dissolution of the Town of Rye and what that would mean and whether or not it would be beneficial. It's just a study. We're having a meeting next week to actually the 4 jurisdictions that are involved or municipalities that are involved. So we're a long way away from that. But I hear what you're saying, Norm.
Mr. Mayor?
The second item is we have a city manager here. I think that we have a city management form of government that is running police and garbage and parks, and I think there are parking. We've got parking lots and automated parking. I think there's some synergies there that this commission should look to implement. Some of them maybe in the coming season, but longer term. I know cost is always a factor. It's going to cost the park more from the City of Rye than the services they have now. But I think we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't at least explore the option of the City of Rye managing some of those, because it takes the politics out of it. We've got a stable city manager form of government. We don't have new administrations coming in trying to run a park. And I think that we should tee that up. And Mayor Feinstein, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's something that I've raised a few times, I guess, at the last meeting, and I also raised it in the spring, I believe. I think that we have to always look at ways of being more efficient, sharing, and being cost conscious as well. And it's interesting that the City of Rye does manage, in fact, a golf course and does have expertise there. And I said this at the last meeting, that it's not being disrespectful to any of our employees who are quite professional, but I think that it would be irresponsible of us as fiduciaries if we didn't look at possible alternatives. Start small and looking at additional shared services, maybe with the City of Rye, because let's face it, the town park, Rye Town Park is housed in the City of Rye, and maybe also thinking long term as well, because I do think that there can be economies of scale.
Scott, is there anything you want to add? Any comments to feasibility?
I don't know how to do that. Whether or not we need a subcommittee, whether or not the City of Rye would in fact make a recommendation, a possibility.
I think maybe that's the place. I would say this place started.
I would assume that you would have a resolution from the commission, and then I think the elected, our various elected boards would endorse it. Because I think there's certainly, I think, multiple layers to this issue. Some that are maybe outside of the park commission realm that I think might be important to make sure that each of the elected bodies wants to go in the same direction. The last thing I think we want to do is do a merger or some other type of fairly in-depth study and come back and find that maybe we're not all on the same page.
I'm trying to say to be able to endorse studying the issue and make recommendations. Is that what you're saying? Because no board is going to vote without a specific recommendation. If you're saying that generally the municipalities are saying that we would like to look at economies of scale and shared services and have, to go forward in that way and support looking at it.
Most of us do IMAs with our school districts, and they're very broad, they're very generic, and I think they give us lots of flexibility within there so that both of the, because again, our school boards are elected and they have a separate constituency, even though it's the same taxpayer. And I just think that makes sense in this type of arrangement. I'm sorry. Be that as it may, I am Scott Pickup. I think we know everybody here at the dais. It was an interesting meeting. I'm glad you guys got that out of the way before our meeting Wednesday night. Thank you for that. Bishop, I had just a quick question, and I wasn't in the financial report, which, by the way, the quality and I think the effectiveness of the financial reporting has increased dramatically in the last 12 to 18 months, and I think a lot of that is directed towards Bishop and his staff, and it is another, I think it's very beneficial to us as we talk about issues and problems, and just as we start off, I appreciate the effort that goes into that, because I know when we would ask for information, it was difficult at best to get accurate and timely information. So for that, I do appreciate the effort on that staff level. The Westchester Triathlon, do they pay you a specific site fee? Do you negotiate that annually, or how does that work for the use of the park?
The Westchester Triathlon has not paid us a penny except for the repair of the park lawns when they damage them. And they do pay for the extra security that they ask for. Remembering that we shut down at midnight, they then pay our security staff to stay overnight because they're there for 4 days.
Right.
So they pick up the tab for that. But the park itself receives no fee, zero.
Again, this is a policy issue, obviously, for the board, but on an event of that magnitude, and the fact that it is a professionally run, professionally managed event, it would certainly make sense to me that the hosting venue would have some ability to recoup some of additional costs out of an event of that scale. The City of Rye has worked closely with, and I think we've worked with members of the Rye Town Park Commission as well, to make sure that we've brought in extra police, that we've had extra costs as well, and we've recovered some of that as well from the organizers. And I think it's not out of the realm of possibility to sit down with them and try to negotiate some sort of additional compensation for the use. And it's a fairly dramatic use of the park. And it's a large-scale event, like I said, professionally managed, so it might be something you might want to take a look at. Be that as it may, as we talked about dogs, and luckily we weren't talking about coyotes, so I'll certainly talk to you about dogs, which is a little less intense for us at the moment. The city has looked at and will be part of our budget. Time for the mayor to go home. Is that it? Are we cut off? It's 8 o'clock.
No,
8 o'clock.
it's actually the fact that I'm supposed to be at another commitment.
Oh, no. We'll make it quick. One of the things I think that we can talk about is potentially sharing. We're looking at an animal control type of parking enforcement officer. It is actually a registered Westchester County Civil Service position. It's something that we're talking about because, again, the issue of coyotes and the overlapping issues of managing dogs, as you can see, the state's divesting itself more and more of responsibility, and those responsibilities are rolling downhill when they end up traditionally in the lowest level of government. That would be us. So we're having to take a hard look at these new responsibilities. Any relief for long-term federal support or other support of these kind of animal control programs is probably down the road. So it might be something we would take a look at. And again, if we had an IMA, that's the kind of thing I think we could talk about in terms of shared services or the like.
Excuse me, Scott, you said animal control, parking enforcement. Is that one person or two people?
It's actually one person. It's one title. So
dog
they
warden?
could wrestle dogs with one hand and ride a ticket with the other. So, well, it's not even a dog warden necessarily.
Now, the official title is Animal Control Officer.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, they can issue tickets. They can. I know the conversation earlier about, why can't we get additional enforcement? I think we hear that constantly. In the same breath, we also hear we need to reduce taxes. And by the way, as we all are aware, full-time police are expensive, especially in relationship to these types of activities. When we're talking about overtime hours or weekend hours or holiday hours. And I guess the last piece that I'll just add again is something that the city is interested in pursuing. Is I think we were very aggressive this year in partnership with some recommendations from the commission to try to increase police presence in the park. That has a cost, a pretty substantial cost on holidays. 4th of July is probably the most busy period, 24-hour period for the City of Rye in terms of just activities, whether it's in Rye Town Park, Playland, whatever the case may be. We have a tremendous demand for services. And one of the issues that we're struggling with is that generated a substantial increase in our overtime coverages for the 3 summer holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. We'd like to pursue, if we're going to continue that type of coverage, and I think it was successful. I've heard positive feedback that having that additional police presence made people want to come to the park and potentially helped to create an environment where families and other people wanted to come and spend time here, and that was great to hear. The problem is, again, there's an offsetting issue, and that is very expensive for us to do that. So that's something that we'd like to, again, bring to the table and have a conversation as we go forward. So those were my basic comments, and again, I think there's a way we can do this, to have a constructive dialogue and certainly bring something back to the commission to take a look at and hopefully move forward.
Scott, I think sorry.
All right, Ben, you got to flip the roast. So
I had it on.
dinner.
Scott, the one thing that's apparent, and I'm glad you touched on it, because I'd rather it come from someone outside of the commission, not than the commission, is that there's a tremendous amount of progress that's taken place over the past couple years.
Yes.
We had a park that worked and was managed in a vacuum. Okay, and I wish that Jim and Jane were still here, because I'm going to make the comment now just to piggyback on your comments. The process for Rye Town Park, the way it operates, the way the meetings are held, the fact that they're televised is a breath of fresh air for the residents and the taxpayers. Jane spoke about the taxes that support the beach earlier, but the important aspect of that is we went from an operation style or lack of management that cost the taxpayers just under $500,000. Okay, so year after year after year after year, the park lost millions of dollars. The taxpayers footed the bill, and there was no public outrage. Okay, this commission worked tirelessly, brought that loss, that liability that the taxpayers had a burden to $100,000, which is great, and obviously it's going to be even less this year, and so there's some great progress here. And if the next step towards that progress is an increased role from the City of Rye that's going to be beneficial to all taxpayers, then that's a step that I'm pretty confident that the board's going to want to hear. The gentleman, Dan brought forward from the Mayor's Commission, the opportunity of having automated parking access and/or automated beach access, which is also, a step in the right direction. And obviously, and like Mayor Feinstein has mentioned, it's the fiduciary responsibility of this board and boards like this to do what's right for the taxpayers. So, Scott, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Scott, to your first point, that you'd like us to pass a resolution saying that we'd like you to do further analysis, was that the point that you were trying to say?
Do you think that we
I didn't
need
know
a
whether it was
resolution?
us or our individual boards. That's what I wasn't clear about.
I think the way that we want to do this is to have some sort of IMA where we can, at least in a broad sense, talk about shared services, talk about the recommendations, talk about anything else that you want to include in that scope, so that, again, since we're dealing with multiple jurisdictions, we all have the same idea of the world of where we're working, and then ultimately, I think, given direction from the commission and direction from each of our elected bodies, we can start working on specific recommendations, specific areas that you'd like to see us work on together.
So I think that's something that the representatives of this board need to take back to their constituents and their board to come up, maybe come back with their key items.
I'm sure the mayor and I will talk. We'll draft something even possibly and share amongst the various elected bodies. It's
That
always
would be
easier to
ideal.
work from a document than to have four
That would be-
added to one.
That would be my suggestion.
Great.
That could be a sounding board.
Yeah,
Love to do.
good.
Very
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
much.
Mayor, take care.
Yes.
Drive safe.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we're done, right?
There should-
Or is there something